Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know, if you really look at the history of technology, there are these moments, these inflection points that just redefine everything.
Absolutely. They change how we work, how economies function, how we even talk to each other.
And the last time we saw a shift this big, this fundamental, it was probably the arrival of the internet.
Oh, for sure. Back in the 80s and 90s, people knew the internet was a big deal, but I don't think anyone, even the most optimistic forecasters, really grasped how totally it would reshape our world. We're living through one of those moments again right now.
And this time, the revolution is being driven by artificial intelligence. It is, without a doubt, becoming the defining technology for the next 10, 20 years.
Which is why every nation is scrambling. It's a race. And the fear is you either become a creator and a leader in AI, or you become a consumer of someone else's.
And that's our focus for this deep dive. We're looking at a huge, calculated, strategic move by one of the world's biggest players,
Yep.
India, and its plan to become a global AI powerhouse.
We are getting into the official government blueprint. It's called the National AI Mission, though you'll often just hear it called the India AI Mission. And this isn't some theoretical paper. It is a very proactive, very detailed strategy to weave AI into every part of the Indian economy and daily life.
Okay, so let's put some numbers on this right away. What's the scope here? The source material lays it out pretty clearly.
It does. First, the timeline is aggressive. It's a 5-year duration running from 2024 to 2029. That tells you everything about the urgency they feel. The clock is ticking.
And what about the money? This kind of ambition doesn't come cheap.
Not at all. The initial investment, and I stress initial, is pegged at about 10,000 crore.
10,000 crore.
Yeah.
Okay, for our listeners around the world, what does that translate to?
You're looking at roughly 1.2 billion US dollars. Now, that number itself, just the raw figure, tells you this is a top-tier national priority. This is serious capital.
Okay, but let's put that in context right away because that's a crucial point. $1.2 billion.
Mm.
Sounds like a lot, but when you look at the tens, maybe hundreds of billions being poured into AI by the US, by China, is it enough to actually compete?
And that is the absolute core question of this entire strategy. You're right. On paper, dollar for dollar, it doesn't look like it competes with the spending in Silicon Valley or Beijing.
Mm.
But, and this is key, it's not designed to.
So it's not about matching their spending.
No, it's designed to be a catalytic investment. It's meant to be incredibly strategic. The government is using that money to fix the biggest bottlenecks in the system, the things the private sector can't or won't fund on its own.
Like what, for example?
Like, precisely.
Right.
You identify the weakest links in the chain, which for them are high-end hardware and skilled talent, and you inject just enough capital there to make them national assets. It's all about maximizing the return for the entire ecosystem.
So our mission today for you is to unpack this whole blueprint. We're going to look at the huge vision behind it, the actual nuts and bolts of what they plan to build, and importantly, the ethical guardrails they're trying to design in from day one. Okay, so let's get into it. Before we get lost in the tech, the GPUs, and the LLMs, let's start with the why. The mission has these 4 huge objectives driving this entire investment.
Right, and the first one, the big overarching goal that really shapes everything else, is this idea of inclusive AI development.
Inclusive development.
Yes, and the word they use over and over in the source material is the mission is to democratize AI.
Democratize.
Yes.
I mean, that's a really heavy, powerful word to use for technology. What does it actually mean in this context?
It's so much more than just, making sure an app is available in the App Store. It's a direct response to the biggest danger of any tech revolution.
Me too.
That the benefits, the money, the power, it all gets concentrated at the top. With big corporations and big cities among people who are already well off, the mission explicitly says its goal is to make sure the people at the bottom are not left behind.
So it's a preemptive strike against a new kind of digital divide, an AI divide, which could be much, much worse than the internet divide ever was.
Exactly, an economic chasm.
Yeah.
And so they've set very specific targets for this. The mission is to ensure AI access and its benefits reach small businesses, tech startups, and this is the most critical part for India rural areas.
That feels like a monumental challenge. I mean, for a country where the majority of the population is still outside the big metro areas, getting this kind of high-tech tool out there seems incredibly difficult.
It is the central challenge. If AI only serves the 20 or 30% of the population in the cities, the mission has failed its most basic goal. It's not just an ethical point, it's a straight-up economic imperative for them.
Let's push on that a bit, though. To run AI, you need things like constant, reliable power. You need high-speed internet. You need people trained to use these tools. How realistic is this democratization goal when you consider the infrastructure challenges that still exist in many rural parts of the country?
That's the Gordian knot they have to untie. You're right. The mission can't succeed in a vacuum. It has to be tied to all the other national infrastructure projects. It's a war on multiple fronts.
So it's not just about AI.
No, you can't just airdrop a sophisticated language model into a village that doesn't have reliable electricity. It means the AI mission has to push and accelerate things like the rural electrification programs or the Ferrotnet project to lay fiber optic cables. It all has to move together.
And the tools themselves probably have to be designed differently.
Absolutely. They have to be resilient. Maybe they can work offline or on very low bandwidth. And crucially, they have to work in local languages, which is a massive technical hurdle in itself. This isn't just about building tech, it's about this huge integrated effort of technology, sociology, and infrastructure.
So the real measure of success isn't, say, how fast their AI model is.
No. The real measure is how many small farmers are using it to get better crop yields, or how many local artisans are using it to access global markets. It's about that tangible economic uplift.
Okay, that brings us neatly to the next part, which is where things get really interesting. Moving from the principle of inclusion to the hard reality of economic imperatives.
Right. This can't just be a noble research project. The source material is very clear. This investment has to produce tangible economic growth. And it breaks that down into three main pillars.
Here's the first one.
The first one is pretty fundamental. Just straight up boosting productivity. Using AI tools to make every sector of the economy more efficient, not just in software, but in manufacturing, in agriculture, in logistics, making things faster, cheaper, and better.
And the second pillar, this is where I see a major point of tension. It's employment and job creation. They want to create skilled jobs. But everyone knows that AI is also a tool for automation, for job displacement. How do they square that circle?
That is the central policy challenge of our time, isn't it? The strategy laid out in the source material isn't to try and stop job displacement. I think they see that as inevitable.
So they're not fighting automation.
They're trying to manage the transition. The focus is on rapid, mass-scale reskilling. The jobs that will be created are completely different. You're talking about AI developers, prompt engineers, data analysts, people who maintain these complex systems.
So moving from high-volume, lower-skill jobs
to high-value, high-skill jobs. And the success of the whole mission really hinges on whether they can build that bridge for people. Can they move workers from the jobs that are disappearing up the economic ladder into these new roles instead of just out of the workforce entirely?
And the third economic goal.
The third one ties it all together. It's about increasing India's market share in the global AI economy.
Taking this domestic success and exporting it.
Exactly. If you build your own powerful indigenous AI models and the infrastructure to run them, that capability becomes a product. You can sell it, you can attract foreign investment, you can serve international markets. It's a reinforcing loop. Build the tech, use it to boost your own economy, create the skilled workforce to support it, and then sell that expertise to the world.
Okay, so we've got inclusion and economic power. But the mission is also very clear that it's not just about moving fast. It's about moving responsibly. This brings us to section 1.3, ethical and social governance.
And this is, I would argue, one of the most forward-thinking parts of the whole plan. They are making ethics an objective from the start, not an afterthought.
So what specific guardrails are they building in?
Well, the big one, the one that gets a lot of attention, is a commitment to stringent standards for data privacy. Alongside that is a formal pledge to address the potential negative social impacts like algorithmic bias or the misuse of AI.
Now, data privacy for over 1 billion people is already a massively complex issue. But the source material gives us this incredible little anecdote that really frames the cultural challenge they're up against.
It does. It's fascinating. It talks about traditional life in a rural village. And it describes how culturally certain people or just the structure of the community acted as, and this is the source's term, old CCTVs.
Old CCTVs, what does that mean?
It's not about malicious spying. It's just that in a close-knit community, there was a constant ambient awareness of information. You know, who is visiting whom, who went to the market, what they bought. Personal data was, by its nature, communal and shared.
So the whole modern Western concept of a sharp boundary
Yeah.
around your personal, private Datejust.
Hmm.
Doesn't map onto that cultural reality.
Exactly. There's this pre-existing, deeply ingrained cultural habit of transparency and communal data sharing. So when the government comes in and says, we need to follow these strict new data privacy rules, they're not just passing a law. They have to actively work to shift a centuries-old cultural mindset.
That's a huge challenge. I mean, on one hand, they need massive amounts of local data to train their AI models
Right.
to achieve that democratization goal.
Right.
But on the other hand, they have to protect the privacy of the very people whose data they need. How do you even begin to walk that tightrope?
The only way is with extreme transparency and powerful technology, things like aggressive data de-identification and anonymization. You have to create these secure, heavily governed data sandboxes where researchers can work with aggregate data without ever seeing personal information.
So public trust is everything.
It's the whole game. If people don't trust the system, if they think the AI being used in their healthcare or their banking is spying on them, they won't use it. And the second they opt out, the goal of inclusion completely collapses.
And this domestic challenge, this effort to build a trustworthy system at home, becomes a foundation for their final objective.
Yes, it all links together. The final goal is global leadership in AI governance.
So the idea is, if we can solve this incredibly complex puzzle at home,
Then you can export that model. By demonstrating that you can build and deploy AI ethically and inclusively at such a massive scale, you position yourself not just to follow global rules, but to actually write them.
and we see them already taking on that role. The sources mention India being very active in forums like the Paris AI Summit and something called GPAI. What is GPAI?
GPAI is the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence. It's basically a coalition of major economies trying to guide the responsible development of AI. India recently held the chair, which is a big deal.
And why is their leadership there so important?
Because they bring a different perspective. A lot of the Western conversation around AI governance is focused on, mitigating risks for already wealthy societies. India is able to steer that conversation towards things like development, accessibility, and economic upliftment. They're making sure the needs of the developing world are part of the blueprint for global AI.
So their influence abroad is a direct reflection of their success at home. It's a powerful feedback loop.
A very powerful one. The global ambition gives them more reason to get the domestic ethics right.
Okay, so that's the why. Inclusion, economic growth, ethics, and global leadership. A massive vision. Now let's get into the how. How are they actually going to execute this? The plan is broken down into 5 core practical components. This is where the 10,000 crore actually goes.
And the first pillar is the most immediate, most urgent one. It's computing infrastructure development. Because if you look at the global AI race, the single biggest bottleneck right now isn't algorithms. It's not even talent. It's raw computing power.
We're talking about the hardware, the chips.
Exactly. The source material points to 2 critical things they're spending on. First, GPUs, graphic processing units. These are the engines of modern AI. A normal computer chip, a CPU, is great at doing 1 or 2 things very fast.
Right.
A GPU is designed to do thousands of things at once, which is exactly what you need for training these deep learning models. Without access to huge clusters of the latest GPUs, the dream of building your own world-class AI is it's dead on arrival.
And the second area of focus for the infrastructure
Is making that power accessible through robust cloud services. It's one thing to buy a mountain of GPUs, it's another thing to make them usable for everyone.
So this is about building a national AI cloud.
Essentially, yes. An infrastructure that's scalable and powerful enough to serve not just big government projects, but also the startups, the researchers, the small businesses that are central to that democratization goal. A place where they can get access to subsidized computing time.
But let's be real about the challenge here. There is a global crunch for these high-end GPUs. Everyone wants them. How does India, with a $1.2 billion fund, realistically acquire enough of this hardware to compete with players who are spending 10 times that?
It's a huge geopolitical and logistical challenge. A massive chunk of that initial 10,000 crore has to go directly to procuring these chips on the international market. They have to use their diplomatic leverage to secure supply chains because these chips are one of the most contested resources on the planet right now.
So building that foundation is the absolute first step.
It is the prerequisite for everything else. Without that accessible, high-performance computing backbone, none of the other 4 pillars can even get off the ground.
Which leads us right to that second component, developing indigenous AI models. The mission isn't just about using foreign tech, it's about building their own.
This is a matter of strategic autonomy. It's non-negotiable if you want to be a leader. If you only use models built and trained in, say, California, you are inherently using a tool that sees the world through a specific cultural and political lens.
And the main target here is developing their own LLMs, or large language models. These are the engines behind generative AI.
Correct. And we have a concrete example of this initiative, an indigenous LLM project called Sarvam.
Sarvam. Now, what makes building an LLM for the Indian context so much more difficult than building one for, say, the United States?
The complexity is just on another level. It comes down to language. India has 22 officially recognized languages and literally thousands of dialects. For many of these, there's very little clean, digitized text available for an AI to learn from. They're what we call low-resource languages.
But it's more than just the number of languages, right? It's how people actually use them.
Exactly. People use what's called code mixing or code switching. They'll start a sentence in Hindi and finish it in English, or mix Tamil and English words together. It's completely fluid.
So a standard American or European LLM trained mostly on clean English text would just get completely lost. It wouldn't understand a normal conversation on the street in Mumbai.
It would be functionally useless in many real-world scenarios. So an indigenous model like Sarvam has to be built from the ground up to be a polyglot. It has to understand these complex linguistic patterns. And that requires totally new approaches to gathering data and building the model architecture. It's a huge undertaking, but it's essential for both linguistic inclusion and for strategic independence.
And that data piece is the perfect transition to the third component, which is the fuel for this whole engine.
Yeah.
Data and the AI corpus.
Right. An AI model is only as smart as the data it's trained on. And right now, there's a huge deficit of high-quality, local, diverse data.
So what's the government's plan to fix that?
They are committing to creating and preparing thousands of high-quality data sets. And this is more than just collecting information. It's this massive, labor-intensive process of finding raw data agricultural records, medical text, transcriptions of different dialects, and then cleaning it, organizing it, and meticulously labeling it so an AI can understand it.
It's so important for people to understand this link. To get a uniquely Indian AI like Sarvam.
You need uniquely Indian data, and lots of it.
And this is where that tension with data privacy comes roaring back. They have to generate thousands of these data sets super fast,
right?
But they also have to uphold the very strict privacy standards they've set for themselves.
It's a constant balancing act. It requires a huge investment in anonymization technology and very strict governance. Because if the data is poor quality or biased or gathered unethically, the model will be biased and ineffective. It would undermine the entire mission from the inside out.
Okay, moving to the fourth pillar. This one is about bringing in the private sector, supporting startups and industry.
This is the government acknowledging that they can't and shouldn't do this alone. They are positioning themselves as the catalyst.
The risk reducer.
Exactly. Frontier tech is incredibly expensive and the chance of failure is high. So the mission is providing direct financial support grants, seed funding, and creating formal ways for the government and private companies to cooperate.
So by providing things like subsidized computing time on those GPU clusters we talked about and access to these new data sets,
they lower the barrier to entry. A small, brilliant startup can now afford to experiment and build products that would have been impossible before. It dramatically speeds up the process of moving from pure research to a commercial product that people can actually use. This is how you build that domestic market share they're aiming for.
And that leaves us with the fifth and final pillar. And it might be the most important one for the long term: talent development and skilling.
This is absolutely fundamental. You can build the best hardware and the smartest models in the world, but if you don't have a domestic workforce that knows how to use them, maintain them, and innovate on top of them, then all you've done is create jobs for foreign experts.
It's not a sustainable model.
Not at all. It fails the economic empowerment goal. So this pillar is all about addressing the massive global skill gap in AI.
What are the specific initiatives they're rolling out?
The main strategy is to run these specialized, high-intensity AI skilling programs. And they're doing it through their top-tier technical institutes, like the IITs, which are world-renowned.
And it sounds like they're being very flexible with the structure of these programs. It's not just about 4-year degrees.
No, the demand is too urgent for that. They're offering a whole range. There are short, one-week courses for a professional who just needs to get up to speed on one specific new technology. Then there are longer programs, 3 months, 6 months, a full year, for people who need deeper specialization.
So they're trying to meet people where they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're creating pathways for new graduates, for mid-career professionals, even for government workers. And one other thing they mention is the inclusion of mentorship programs.
Which is important because this isn't something you can just learn from a textbook.
Right, you need hands-on experience. The mentorship piece ensures that knowledge gets transferred in a practical way, probably by working on real-world problems with some of the startups from the fourth pillar. It's all designed to build that homegrown workforce that can power this new AI economy for decades to come.
Now, this whole mission, all 5 of these pillars, it's not happening in a bubble. And this brings us to Section 3. Strategic alignment. They are deliberately connecting this AI mission to other huge national projects.
Yes, and this is where you see the long-term grand strategy at play. The most important connection mentioned in the sources is the explicit alignment of the National Semiconductor Mission with this national AI mission.
Okay, this is a critical link to understand. Why is it so powerful to vertically integrate chip manufacturing, the semiconductor mission, with AI development?
In a word, autonomy. Strategic autonomy. We already established that AI runs on high-end GPUs. Those GPUs are incredibly complex to make, and they are built on advanced semiconductors.
So if you have to buy all your chips from other countries,
you are strategically vulnerable. You're at the mercy of their politics, their supply chains, their prices. Your entire national AI ambition could be stalled because of a decision made in another country's capital.
so by building up their own semiconductor industry, they create a guaranteed domestic supply chain for the hardware the AI mission needs.
It's a perfect synergy. The AI mission creates a massive guaranteed customer for the new domestic chip industry. And the chip industry, in turn, provides a secure, reliable supply of the hardware needed for the AI mission. It's a closed loop that dramatically reduces their dependence on foreign tech for the most important resource of the 21st century.
And then just to round this out, let's quickly touch again on the global positioning. How does this internal strength building project outward?
Well, building your own chips and your own models, that demonstrates serious domestic capability. That gives you credibility. But the leadership role itself is played out in those international forums we talked about, like GPAI and the Paris AI Summit.
Because they can now go to those meetings not just with ideas, but with proof that their model works.
Exactly. The outward-facing diplomacy is backed by inward-facing reality. They can credibly argue for a global governance model that prioritizes inclusion and ethics because they are actively building one at an unprecedented scale back home. The whole strategy completes itself.
This has been a really incredible breakdown of a plan that is just. It's immense in its ambition. So, to quickly recap the biggest takeaways for you, the listener, we're talking about a focused 5-year plan with an initial investment of 10,000 crore.
And it's built on this dual focus. On one side, you have the goal of inclusion, making sure AI reaches rural communities and small businesses. On the other, you have hardcore innovation building their own complex indigenous models like Sarvam.
And it's all being done as part of an integrated national strategy. It's tied directly to other foundational projects, especially the National Semiconductor Mission, to build that end-to-end capability from the silicon chip all the way up to the software.
That dual focus is really the core of it all. The ethical need for democratization running right alongside the technological need for sovereign capability.
It is. And it leaves us with a final, really important question for you to think about as this all unfolds.
It's a question that comes directly from that central tension. You have the mission's heavy emphasis on developing indigenous LLMs and generating these huge local data sets, which they need for national growth. But you also have this goal of global leadership and ethical governance. So how might the very definition of data privacy have to evolve in India over these next 5 years?
It's the ultimate conflict. They need more data than ever to make inclusion a reality, but they need stricter privacy than ever to maintain public trust.
Precisely. What choices, what trade-offs will the government have to make between individual data ownership and the state's need to access data for the greater good of democratization? Especially as these AI tools start being used in communities that have a completely different cultural understanding of what private information even means.
That balance between societal benefit and individual rights is going to be the ultimate test of this entire mission.
It really is a truly profound challenge to watch over the next decade.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you next time.